Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This week I'm back for a new video and this time there it is. I'm now showing my face. I kind of want to make it more lively and I want to improve the quality of my videos. By the way, I would really appreciate your feedback since I'm trying to change a bit of parameters in my more recent video. So thank you guys for leaving some comments about that. And now let's get into the video. So this week we have Beau Didier and his Groove Techno. You have as usual the two reference tracks that I use for this preview, and you can also get the project file in the link in the description if you want it. Thank you guys so much for the support, and now let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the kick first, as I usually do. So for this one, we have some groovy kick. So you see lots of presence from the sub bass. So usually Beau Didier is kind of using either a sine wave or a very prominent tom for his bass line. So that's what is made out of this group kick. I'm gonna show you as usual the different layers and I'm gonna withdraw the group processing so that you can understand how I started. So for this one, as I usually do, I'm gonna take 3 different layers, top, mid, main for my kick punch. And so I do have just a few EQs here. I'm gonna draw them. So this is my main kick. Basically, this is the subby part of the kick. So I use this trancy punch and there's a kind of reverby and hairy thing in the mid-range, so that's why I cut it. And I also don't like really transient, so that's why I cut it also like this. Since I'm now cutting this transient, I want to bring it back, but something that I like more. Basically, I want a bit more punch. And usually what I do is I use a 909 and I take only the mid part, like this. I cut the boxiness, this. And then I have a top transient. And this one is really like a talk, a mid talk I liked. So here I have something that's pretty punchy. And I'm still gonna work on it to withdraw and cut a bit more the boxiness and get it more of a very clean punch. Then there is the rumble, and I do it for almost of my tutorials for groovy techno. Basically, I took the FX subverb, which is very effective. And you can just play with the pitch to get the sub phase that you want. I have this side chain, and then I just really cut with the EQ to get only the sub part. I then have this tom, which is basically my bass line. So there is a very characteristic groovy sound that Beau Didier is using. So he might use either a sub sine or a tom. So basically in a 16th pattern, I have 2 different toms and I play with the velocity. I'm also adding this little tom to get a bit more groove. And then I'm just sidechaining and keep only the lower mid or sub bass part. Because otherwise it's too characteristic and a bit too raw, and I really want something that's kind of muffled into the rumble and the kick group. So all together, I have already this kind of groove. And I'm gonna show you now the group processing. So what I do usually is take this full-on overdrive. That's gonna really glue the whole thing together and distort a bit the whole thing. Then I want to bring back a bit more high-end and cut again some some hollow sound in the mid-range. Then I'm using this OTT as I now do almost on all my key groups because I think this is so effective. You can play around with the depth, downwards, upwards, to get something really tight and play around with the frequencies until you reach something that's very pressed and tight. And then just a final EQ because as you can hear, it was a bit too much here for some of the frequency range, especially for the transient. So I kind of balance everything to get the right sound when the punch hits. Just a final limiter, so I'm using the Ableton Clipper. And finally, just to add a bit more to my groove, I did what he did for Didier in one of his tracks here. It's basically adding that triangle percussion kind of loop sound. So just this note with a velocity movement like this. I play with the beginning of the sample because I thought it was a bit more smooth. And then I just EQ so that it's not too harsh for my track. I then have this rack that I use a lot, which brings a bit more life to these Perc loops. So this is basically this industrial Perc rack from Audio React, and it's a delay and a reverb. And I play around with a dry wet to get something a bit more mild than the usual preset. Finally, I just have my sidechain, a very slight reverb, and a final EQ here, which is pretty heavy actually because I had too much of those mid frequencies. Then I have this sign that also emphasizes it really emphasizes that tom and get a bit more movement to that bass line. You can use either the toms, either the sign, sometimes also both combined. Just gotta make sure you have the right tone so that it doesn't clash. There you go, you have your kick group. I then have just a second sine wave, but this one is a bit more in the high frequency. So I just use this subsine preset from Ableton. I sidechain, I just solo and EQ this sine wave, slight reverb, and final sidechain like this. And this is gonna bring another kind of groove in the middle of the track. And I think it does that in one of these reference. I have also some call and answer because I'm now adding this Perc sound. So really to make those, just find a Perc loop or whatever kind of sample that you like. You can play around with the pitch, you can add a grain delay to create different kind of textures. And once you like it, you can just combine it with the sine wave here and make a call and answer like this. You put it into the same room, so that's why I have the same reverb. I EQ so that I don't have too much low frequency on reverby sound here. That's gonna add too much mud. And there you go, you have a kind of a mid groove that's gonna be added to that sound. And finally, I have another one here. I'm actually bringing it slowly. So here with that frequency automation. And it's gonna add that rhythm with that little loop. I also have some variation in my kick, as you can see here, with those kind of double kicks. Sometimes I have also some cuts, like here, for instance. And that's pretty much it. So basically you can see that as my low groove. This one is more like the mid groove. And then on top of that, I'm gonna have some drums and some other kind of elements in the background or to create an atmosphere. So now let's get into the drums. I have, of course, my main open hats, which is really straightforward. Basically, I just chose a very sharp hi-hat sample that I liked. Then I can play around with the transient here to make it more sharp. As you can see. And I also play with the pitch to get the sound that I like more in the context. Then I'm EQing, of course, to make the things a bit more clear. I'm also using that hallucination preset, which is very effective for groove, and then just a sidechain, make the thing more clean. I have another hat, which is gonna like play also a kind of call and answer with that main open hat. So this one, there is a velocity movement thanks to this sidechain, because without it, it's a very straightforward hat. Like this, there's more of a rhythm, and then it's the same kind of processing. And then there's also some random hats like this. That's gonna add, again, more movement to my track. And again, just taking some random hats. This one is from a kit from Ableton, and then just the same kind of processing. So EQing, actually EQ like this. Then just a slight reverb, a little bit of delay to add more groove, and final sidechain. And now I have a loop. So this one is gonna add a bit more wideness to open up the sound, and it's gonna add more rhythm with a 16 kind of pattern. It's nice sometimes to throw in a loop that you can find, especially those kind of old school loops for this kind of groovy sounds. So here, no treatment, as there was already a kind of room. So I just put it like this and had my sidechain. Then I have a ride, which is very important. You can find them in almost every groovy tracks currently. So I took this sample, I took this last part of the ride to make the first start of the movement, and then the full ride to make that basic pattern. You can play also with the pitch to try different sounds. Then I'm just EQing, just using the Sus2 to cut the resonances, and then sidechaining. So that's pretty much it for my drums. Then I have my clap and snare. So these two are playing all together at the end of the track. I'm gonna first introduce the main snare, which is this sound. Pretty sharp clap. I'm just EQing to make it more bright, and then just adding some classical compression, very slight snare room reverb, just a final EQ. And this one is gonna be layered with that open hat loop, which is basically kind of an old school loop that has a clap and snare in it. And those two are combining well together. This is gonna form my main snare. At the end, I'm gonna add a variation with another clap, which is a basic 808 clap. And I think there's a kind of housey vibe also in the tracks of Beau Didier. So I have this pattern, lots of movement in the velocity, little variation at the end of the two bars, and altogether it's now then going to be added up to the other snare and open hat loop. So I took only the clap part, and it's going to add up and make this. So that's pretty much it for the clap and snare. Now I have a few other elements. So I have the vocal. So as I was digging through the kits, drum kits from Ableton, I found this basic beatbox kit, and I liked the vocal that I found in it. There's a kind of house vibe in it also. So I took these two sounds and just make them pop a few times here and there in the track. In terms of processing, nothing special here, just my usual go-to delay and reverb, a slight EQ to make it a bit more sharp, and a sidechain. I have also a pad, which is more of a dissonant pad. I really like the atmosphere and mood that it brings. Especially you can find a lot of these in today's groove tracks. So I took a random pad from Serum presets that you get already in the synths. I'm just gonna add this shifter that's gonna make really the dissonant noise. And I think I'm just using the root note and +5, but everything really doesn't really matter because of this shifter. Everything's going to be moved around in terms of frequency. I'm going to bring it here to bring up the intensity and the tension until I will release it with the reverb tail from the return channel at the drop. And then I completely change the mood of the track. Basically, I'm withdrawing lots of different elements. I bring the clap and I'm starting a new kind of progression for the rest of the track. So this is an example of a progressive arrangement that you can do for these tracks, and also some kind of drops that you can do. Finally, there's just a few effects here. So I have just a few sweep ups before my every 8 bars or whatever to make my kind of mini drops. Like that. And then I just have some background elements that really gonna fill up the background and the rest of the frequency spectrum, also to give the spooky or weird vibe. So I have lots of effects. Basically, I take some random samples from my bank and I just play with the pitch here. Usually when you pitch it down a lot, you get those spooky textures. And you can also add grain delays on it. So for instance, here, I just took this sound, which is kind of an alarm sound. And when you put the grain delay, you can create completely different textures, and usually it's more dark. So I just took some random samples here. Sometimes it's the same sample, just a different pitch, so that it's more coherent. Here I have some kind of impacts. Really, it's pretty easy to make those weird sounds with those two tools. So pitch, button here, and the grain delay. Then I just EQ a bit, add a bit of room and sidechain, and that's pretty much it for these elements, really. So I think that's pretty much it for this track, guys. Feel free to say what you think in the comments. Thank you so much, and I see you in the next one. Ciao, guys.